recent State of Play event, focusing solely on upcoming Ghost of Tsushima, showed a ton of new gameplay and features ahead of its release on July 17th. As an open-world game with a major focus on exploring, seeking out shrines and other points of interest, we were excited to see what this extended look would bring. So we've done a little extra digging outside of those 18 minutes of gameplay to bring you some new little details and facts you may have missed. Enjoy, and as always, let us know in the comments if you find any of your own. Developer Sucker Punch has said that one of the main goals in making Ghost of Tsushima was creating a world with very little UI. So a world uncluttered by minimap icons and tooltips and constant signposting to your next objective. One of the main tools the studio created to combat this was the guiding wind function. Pressing right on the D-pad at any time will summon a visible gust of wind to appear alongside protagonist Jin Sakai. That wind will blow in the direction of your next objective, a gentle, non-intrusive pointer. It's a nice touch, and you have to wonder whether the role of wind as a guiding force in the game is an intentional nod to this period in Japanese history being the first known instance of the term kamikaze, or divine wind, being used. The fact that a typhoon helped Japan defeat the Mongol navy in the first invasion depicted in the game, which happened in November and thus well after the usual Pacific typhoon season, which generally lasted from May to October, perpetuated a belief that Japan would never be defeated or successfully invaded, which actually remained an important aspect of Japanese foreign policy literal centuries later. Another interesting nod to the real-life history Ghost of Tsushima is inspired by is Jin Sakai's entire samurai to ghost evolution when it comes to combat. One of the reasons Japan was so susceptible to the Mongol invasion initially was because it was entirely unprepared for the chaotic way the Mongolian army fought, in comparison to the honorable way of the samurai. The first Mongol invasion was the first time of only 3 instances that the samurai ever fought foreign troops. In the first battle of Hakata Bay, likely the event that Jin Sakai is hinted to have almost lost his life to in the beginning of the game, the Yuan forces advanced in a dense, tightly packed formation, protected by a screen of shields, wielding their polearms close together. As they advanced, they're said to have thrown explosives, frightening the Japanese horses and making them uncontrollable in battle. When the grandson of a Japanese commander shot an arrow to announce the beginning of the battle, it's claimed that the Mongols burst out laughing. By nightfall, on the day of the invasion, the Japanese had been driven several kilometers inland. Basically, the Mongol army stuck together rather than fight in single combat, as samurai were accustomed to, and deployed tactics designed to disorient and confuse. This is likely why Jin comes to realize that, in order to defeat the invaders, he must leave behind the way of the samurai and take up a different, more improvised and underhanded way of fighting. It's also worth noting that the Mongol invasions were an early example of gunpowder warfare. One of the most notable technological innovations during the war was the use of explosive bombs. The bombs were fired from catapults, inflicting damage on enemy soldiers. Though we really haven't seen anything like that in the game just yet, it'll be interesting if Ghost of Tsushima does explore the impact this introduction had on the defensive forces who were wholly unprepared for them, and how Jin learns to adapt and survive in the aftermath. But back to the game's samurai and ghost paths. In the State of Play demo, we see Jin take on the same enemy encampment in 2 different ways. In one, he faces his foes head-on, sword in hand, the honorable samurai way. It's all about dodging and parrying enemy attacks to open them up for a perfect riposte and a brutal dismemberment. Timing your strikes so that you can even knock arrows right out of the air and switch stances depending on the type of enemy you face. Here you see him go from a stone stance, likely defensive in nature, to water, which seems to be more about fluid movement. When Jin takes on the encampment as the Ghost, his focus is on stealth, causing distractions to enable swift assassinations and using fear as a weapon. Finding the right opportunity will grant him the ability to chain assassinations together, so you can destroy all your enemies in one fell swoop. Interestingly, if you look at the prompts here for killing these enemies while in stealth, there was one prompt that said slaughter and another that said assassinate. We're wondering if this has anything to do with what Sucker Punch has been hinting at when it says you can use fear as a weapon. Director Nate Fox has said in interviews that you can perform some actions that cause Mongolian troops to become scared, and use that to your advantage. So perhaps, if you choose to slaughter the biggest, most imposing enemy in the camp, it'll terrify everyone nearby so much that rather than stay and fight, they'll just turn tail and run. One of the best things about the samurai and ghost duality, however, is that you don't have to rigidly stick to one or the other, and you can mix them up at any time. You can be a samurai decked out in ghost gear, and vice versa. The clash of either living by the Bushido code or adapting to a new way of life is more a story beat. It's a conflict within Jin as a character, but it won't limit what the player can do depending on what's going on in Jin's head.
Faster, Nobu!
Sucker Punch has also said that sword fighting in the game is deliberately difficult, describing the combat as boiling down to 3 words: mud, blood, and steel. What this likely means is that you won't be using a lethal samurai sword to gradually chip away at an enemy's health, nor will you be able to withstand a death by 1,000 cuts. Battles can be over in just a few swings on either side. You can't take on crowds of enemies at once, and each encounter should be a challenge. You can choose to stand off and duel against foes one-on-one in the samurai way, and according to Sucker Punch, those fights are incredibly difficult and get solved in the most cinematic way possible. You need to study your opponent and understand how they attack in order to win. Of course, if fighting fair and clashing swords with the enemy head-on just sounds like a lot of work, that's why the way of the ghost is there. Items like smoke bombs stop Jin having to fight head-on, opening the way for a sneaky stealth takedown instead. As important as the combat is to this game, it's nice to see that a lot of detail is apparently going into the exploration side of things too. In addition to letting the wind guide you, keeping an eye on the open world will uncover more secrets. According to a recent interview with IGN, game director Nate Fox has said that the map we showed during the state of play was very zoomed in. That was just a little portion of the starting area. The actual map is huge. Tsushima Island covers the biomes you can find on mainland Japan, from snowy mountains to bamboo forests to waterfalls and rolling grasslands. It's all there. And Fox continued, even though the map is big, it won't feel empty. We want to give enough stuff to keep it electrifying for the player. We didn't want to make a huge map and have nothing on it. So it's packed with people, items, and stories to explore. So smokestacks indicate people in need of help, and odd-shaped trees or animals could point you in the direction of a place of interest. And in the grand tradition of sandbox open world games, once you've visited a location once, it'll be open for fast travel in the future. Possibly one of the standout stars of the State of Play demo, Fox's guide you to hidden shrines, and by honouring Inari shrines you can unlock charm slots, in which you can equip charms to give you certain boosts and advantages. There are defense charms that mean you slowly regain health while out of battle, stealth charms that can act as traps, such as wind chimes that release poison vapors to kill enemies who pick them up, and utility charms, such as this one, which means smoke bombs restore 25% of your health. Charms can be prioritised based on how you like to approach the game, and Jin can also acquire technique points that let him learn and upgrade skills for further customization. Speaking of customization, it was touched on in the demo, but it seems there are a lot of different armor sets for Jin to find and equip, and armor isn't purely cosmetic. It will actually give you mechanical advantages and disadvantages in battle, meaning, most likely, some sets will be better suited for a direct approach, and some sets will be better used for stealth, when perhaps you need less physical protection, but a better range of motion. It isn't clear yet how you'll come across all these armor sets, but you can see Jin in the demo collecting resources like wood, linen, and supplies, so perhaps we'll be able to craft some of our own, or ask someone else to craft it for us. We'll definitely be able to dye some of the armor sets, as collecting flutter dyes of different colours is a mechanic shown in the demo, but how in-depth this goes is unclear for now. Fans of previous Sucker Punch titles, like the Infamous series, might have expected some sort of morality gauge in Ghost of Tsushima. Perhaps some good, bad samurai ghost branching story choices that change key narrative beats. This isn't the case, the studio has said. Rather, there is one canon story at its heart. Though you do have some conversation choices, as the studio confirmed to VG247, these don't have a lot of story impact and everyone will experience the same story arc in the end. There's no narrative impact per se by doing specific actions or things like that, especially like what we've done in the past with games like Infamous, where that's kind of the core part of the game, according to creative director Jason Connell. In this game, the narrative is the supreme ruler. So, what we're trying to do is we're showing a samurai go through a massive transformation, and sacrificing a lot as he evolves into becoming the ghost. Essentially, Jin's transformation from samurai to ghost is something that mainly happens in the story, whereas the line between the two states is far more blurred and interchangeable when it comes to gameplay. Sucker Punch has clearly put a lot of work into making Ghost of Tsushima look and sound good, and that's probably why the studio has added a bunch of modes and mechanics meant to illustrate and celebrate that fact. There's the monochromatic and grainy cinema mode that echoes classic samurai films, which you can turn on and off at any point during the game. There's a photo mode with changeable depth of field, expressions, soundtrack, and particles. And there's a Japanese voice track for players wanting a fully authentic audiovisual experience. Now, these additions aren't going to be the most important thing to the majority of players, who'll probably be holding out to see just how satisfying the gameplay and story is. But they do show that Sucker Punch is keen to show off the world it has created, which should be a pretty positive sign. So, all that said, are you convinced enough to pick up Ghost of Tsushima, or maybe you're not quite convinced yet? Let us know in the comments, and do subscribe to Eurogamer for more Ghost of Tsushima content in the near future. In the meantime, may I interest you in one of the videos on screen now? Thanks for watching. Bye!